I want to take this moment to truly appreciate each and every one of you, my amazing viewers and subscribers. Your support, love, and encouragement make every story possible. Thank you for being part of this journey, for laughing, crying, and feeling every moment with me. You're not just viewers, you're family. The glow of the San Francisco Bay shimmered through the tall glass windows of the Monarch Grand Hotel, where laughter, soft violin music, and clinking glasses filled the air. For most of the guests, the evening was a celebration of love, of families joined together, and futures sealed. But for Antony Pierce, 35 years old and still carrying the weight of betrayal on his shoulders, the occasion was nothing short of a battlefield for his pride. He had come because his cousin insisted. "It'll be fun," she said. "Meet new people, breathe a little. You've been hiding behind your computer too long." But Antony wasn't here for fun. He was here because saying no felt like admitting that life had already defeated him. Once upon a time, he had been a rising star in the tech world, a young man with a prototype that could have changed the industry. But all of that had been stolen by his best friend, his work and his fiancée, leaving him with nothing but bitterness and a faint hope he might rise again. He straightened his tie and scanned the reception hall, feeling like an intruder among the confident and the wealthy. Tables gleamed with crystal glasses and white roses. Laughter bubbled around him, and then he noticed the woman seated beside him. She was striking, not in the traditional sense the magazines plastered on covers, but in a way that drew the eye and made it linger. Her skin was a smooth, rich brown that glowed under the chandeliers, her curves undeniable in a tailored navy dress that spoke of elegance without trying. Her posture was calm, self-assured, like she knew she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Her hair was styled in soft waves that framed a face both fierce and kind, the kind of face that could command a boardroom and soothe a child in the same breath. Christy Williams. The name alone could send shivers down Wall Street and Silicon Valley alike. Billionaire, founder and CEO of Williams Innovations, a tech empire headquartered in San Francisco, known for software that had revolutionized cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Competitors feared her, allies respected her, but the world didn't know much beyond the empire's name. She rarely granted interviews, avoided magazine covers, and when philanthropy was done, it was the company name, not hers, that signed the checks. She had built an empire, yet chosen to live like a shadow. To Antony, she was just Christy, the elegant woman seated beside him. "Beautiful ceremony," she said softly, breaking the silence between them. Her voice carried warmth, not the clipped tone of someone who lived in boardrooms and power lunches. "Yes," Antony replied, forcing a polite smile. "They seem perfect for each other." She studied him for a moment, as though sensing the heaviness behind his words. "You don't sound convinced." He chuckled dryly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I guess I'm not the best judge of forever." Before she could ask more, Antony stiffened. Across the room, just stepping into the reception hall, was a man he would never forget. Tall, polished, with a smug smile that hadn't changed in years, Derek Lawson, the man who once called him brother, now enemy. And beside him, wrapped in a glittering gown, was Julia, Antony's ex-fiancée, the woman who had once promised him forever, but had chosen Derek instead. Antony's chest tightened. His throat went dry. He wasn't ready for this, not tonight, not like this. He knew the moment they spotted him, Derek's smile would widen. Julia's mocking gaze would scan him, and they would revel in his fall. They had taken everything, and now he feared they would take his dignity too. "Are you all right?" Christy asked, her eyes following his frozen stare. "No," Antony admitted, panic flaring. He turned to her, desperation in his eyes. "I know this is insane, but could you do me a favor? Just for a moment, could you pretend you're my fiancé?" Christy blinked, caught off guard. He had no time to explain, no time to plead further. Derek and Julia were already walking toward their table. Something in Antony's expression, raw, broken, pleading, made Christy straighten her shoulders. "All right," she said simply, her lips curving into a calm, confident smile. "Let's make it convincing." And then they were there. "Antony." Derek's voice was too loud, too jovial, dripping with false warmth. He extended a hand as though they were old friends. "It's been ages. How are things? Life treating you well?" Antony forced a smile, standing tall. "Couldn't be better. Derek, Julia, this is Christy, my fiancée." Julia's eyes flicked to Christy, scanning her curves, her skin, her quiet elegance. For the briefest moment, mockery flashed behind her polite smile. "Oh," she said, dragging out the word. "How lovely to meet you." Christy extended her hand with regal grace. "The pleasure is mine. Antony has told me so much about his past, but not nearly enough about the people who shaped it." Derek chuckled awkwardly, shifting in his shoes, while Julia's smile tightened. "Well," Derek said, "we were just talking about how some people make it big, and some people, well, life takes them elsewhere." Christy tilted her head, her eyes sharp, though her smile never faltered. "Yes, success is funny that way. Sometimes it's about what you build. Other times, it's about what you steal." The words hung in the air like a blade. Antony almost choked back a laugh, astonished by how effortlessly she had defended him, how perfectly she played the role without knowing the full story. Julia's cheeks flushed. Derek cleared his throat. "Well, good seeing you, Antony. Enjoy the evening." They turned away quickly, their arrogance wounded. When they were gone, Antony let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned to Christy, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You didn't have to, I know," she said, her smile softening. "But I wanted to." For the first time in a long time, Antony felt seen, not for his failures, not for the scars of betrayal, but for the man still standing despite it all. "Thank you," he whispered, sincerity pouring from every word. "You don't know what that meant to me." Christy studied him, curiosity flickering in her eyes. Most men she encountered wore masks, either of greed or admiration for her wealth. But Antony's gratitude was raw, unpolished, painfully real. It stirred something in her she hadn't felt in years. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a sleek black card. "Here," she said, handing it to him. "Contact this person. They might be able to help with your project." He frowned, glancing at the card. The name was generic, the contact number simple. No company logo. Why? "Because," she said, her gaze steady. "Sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you." Antony hesitated, then nodded. I don't know how to thank you." Her smile deepened, a touch wistful. Just remember me as Christy, that's all." And with that, she excused herself, leaving Antony staring after her, the card burning in his palm like a promise. He had no idea he had just shared a table with one of the most powerful women in America. To him, she was simply Christy, the woman who had saved him from humiliation, who had stood beside him when he needed it most. But for Christy Williams, billionaire CEO of Williams Innovations, tonight was different too. For the first time in years, she had stepped out from behind her empire's shadow and felt alive. And though neither of them knew it yet, tonight was only the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. 6 months had passed since that night at the Monarch Grand Hotel, and Antony's life no longer looked the same. The business card Christy had given him, unassuming, with no company logo, turned out to be a golden key. The contact she directed him to had introduced him to investors, mentors, and doors that had once been bolted shut. Within weeks, his long-shelved prototype was no longer just a dream sketched on his laptop, but a project that finally saw the light of day. For the first time since Derek's betrayal, Antony felt like himself again, a man with purpose, vision, and something to fight for. His days were consumed with long hours at the lab, refining codes and circuits, and his nights were spent sketching improvements on napkins when sleep refused to come. Slowly, his reputation in the San Francisco tech scene began to shift. People started to whisper about the comeback of the quiet but brilliant innovator, who refused to be buried by betrayal. And yet, despite the success, Antony couldn't stop thinking about her, Christy, the woman who had stepped in like an angel when he was drowning in humiliation, the woman who had defended him with words sharp enough to pierce Derek's pride, the woman who handed him a lifeline without asking for anything in return. He had searched for her. After the wedding night, he had called the number on the card, emailed, even asked the contact he was introduced to if they knew her. But every trail led to a dead end. It was as if she had appeared in his life like a dream, vivid, beautiful, unforgettable, and then vanished into thin air. He told himself she was gone, that their paths wouldn't cross again. But some quiet part of him, a stubborn ember of hope, believed otherwise. And one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, fate proved him right. The cafe was small, tucked into the corner of a busy street, not far from the Williams Innovations headquarters. Antony came there often, drawn to its quiet atmosphere and the view of the Golden Gate Bridge through its wide glass windows. It was a place that reminded him that no matter how vast the world seemed, every dream could fit within its frame if he was willing to chase it. He carried his coffee to a table and opened his laptop, mind already whirring with the latest updates for his project. He was so engrossed that he didn't notice the woman walking in until the sound of her voice, familiar, her melodic, broke through his concentration. "Do you mind if I sit here?" Antony looked up, and for a moment his world tilted. Christy. She stood there, smiling politely, her dark curls cascading over her shoulders, her presence both calm and commanding. For a second, Antony wondered if he had imagined her, if she was just a figment conjured by his restless longing. But no, she was real, right here, right now. "Christy." His voice cracked with disbelief. Her smile widened. "Hello, Antony." He jumped to his feet, nearly knocking over his coffee. "It's you." "My God, I can't believe this. Do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you?" Her brows lifted slightly, amusement flickering in her eyes. "Looking for me?" "Yes," he said breathlessly. "After that night at the wedding, I tried everything. I wanted to thank you. That contact you gave me. Christy, it changed my life. You changed my life." Christy tilted her head, her expression softening. "I'm glad to hear that." "No," Antony insisted, emotion raw in his voice. "You don't understand. That night was the best day of my life. You saved me from humiliation, gave me a chance when I thought the world had turned its back on me." He stopped himself, realizing he was rambling, but the sincerity in his tone was undeniable. "I've wanted nothing more than to see you again, even just to say thank you." Something inside Christy stirred. She had heard countless declarations in her life, praise for her empire, flattery for her wealth, but none had touched her like Antony's words. His gratitude was untainted by greed, his admiration not for what she owned, but for what she had done. It was rare, disarmingly rare. "Well," she said, settling into the seat across from him, "I suppose fate thought it was time we crossed paths again." Antony couldn't stop smiling. His heart raced, his palms itched with nervous energy, but for the first time in years he felt happy, genuinely happy. They talked. At first it was about the project, how it had evolved, the challenges he faced, the milestones he celebrated. Antony spoke with the passion of a man reborn, his hands moving animatedly, his eyes alight with fire. Christy listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed a sharp mind hidden behind her serene exterior. But soon the conversation drifted. They spoke about San Francisco, about the beauty of the bay at sunset, about childhood dreams and the paths life had carved for them. Antony confessed his love for classic rock and his secret talent for cooking, while Christy admitted she often escaped her responsibilities by taking long walks by the ocean where no one recognized her. Antony laughed. "I have to admit, Christy, you're different from anyone I've ever met." "Different?" she echoed, a smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah," he said thoughtfully. "Most people I've met, especially in the tech world, they're obsessed with titles, success, money, but you're grounded, real. It's like you see people for who they are, not for what they have." Her smile faltered slightly, though she hid it quickly. If only he knew. If only he realized that she was the woman behind the empire he admired from afar, the CEO who could make or break companies with a single decision. But she wasn't ready, not yet. For now she wanted to be just Christy, the woman sitting across from him, not the billionaire the world whispered about. "You give me too much credit," she said softly. "No," Antony replied firmly. "I don't think I give you enough." Their coffee stretched into hours, the sky outside darkening as the city lights flickered on. Neither wanted the moment to end. Antony, emboldened by the ease between them, finally asked the question that had been burning in his chest. "Can I see you again?" Christy hesitated. She had built her life on walls, walls to keep suitors away who only saw her wealth, walls to shield herself from a world that judged her curves instead of her mind. But Antony's eyes held no calculation, no hidden agenda, just hope. "Yes," she said at last, her voice gentle but firm. "I'd like that." His grin lit up the room. "Great, then it's a date." The weeks that followed bloomed like spring after a long winter. They met often, sometimes at the cafe, sometimes at little restaurants tucked away from the city's chaos. Antony would take her on walks along the marina, telling her stories that made her laugh until her cheeks hurt. Christy, in turn, shared pieces of herself she rarely revealed, the way she lost her mother young, the struggles of being underestimated in boardrooms full of men, the loneliness of living in a world where her name was known but her heart was invisible. And slowly, quietly, love began to take root. Antony adored her, not the way men adored women in magazines, not for superficial beauty or fleeting thrills. He adored her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke about things she cared about, the way she carried herself with quiet strength, even when the world whispered against her. And Christy found herself falling too. For the first time in her life, she was seen. Not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a woman. Yet beneath the joy, fear lingered. Would he still love her if he knew? If he discovered that the humble Christy, who gave him a card that night, was also the powerhouse behind Williams' innovations, the empire that sponsored his dreams? Or would he pull away, intimidated, like so many before him? As they sat one evening on a bench overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, Antony slipped his hand into hers, his thumb brushing against her skin in quiet affection. "You know," he said softly, "meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. You're everything I didn't know I needed." Christy smiled, but inside her heart trembled. She had everything the world said mattered: money, power, influence. But here, with Antony's hand in hers, she realized she had finally found the one thing she had always longed for: love. And though the storm of the past and the secret of her identity hovered just beyond the horizon, tonight she allowed herself to simply be a woman in love with a man who saw her for who she was. The first time Antony posted a picture of Christy on his social media, he didn't think twice about it. To him, it wasn't about showing off or making a statement. It was simply a reflection of his happiness. They were sitting side by side at a small seafood restaurant overlooking the San Francisco Bay, Christy's laughter frozen mid-frame as Antony leaned in, his arm around her shoulders, eyes bright with joy. The caption was simple: "The best part of my life isn't my work, it's her." It took less than an hour for the comments to roll in. At first, they were harmless, friends teasing him, congratulating him on finally finding someone after the heartbreak he endured. But then the tone shifted. "Wow, really? This is who you ended up with?" "Not what I expected, but okay." And then the one that cut deeper than all the rest. Posted from an account he knew all too well. Julia, his ex-fiancée. "Antony, you used to have taste. Guess desperation changes a man." The words were followed by a laughing emoji, the kind of cruel, dismissive laughter that reopened old wounds. But Antony wasn't the man he had been 6 months ago. He read the comment once, twice, and then without hesitation he typed back, "Desperation? No love, real love. Christy is the most beautiful, intelligent, and extraordinary woman I've ever known. I celebrate her every day, and I wouldn't trade her for the world." The post caught fire. Some people mocked, others defended. But Antony didn't care. For him there was no shame, no hesitation. He was proud of Christy. Proud of every curve, every laugh, every moment she chose to share with him. When Christy saw the exchange, her heart tightened. She had faced whispers and judgments her entire life. Men who turned away because she didn't fit their narrow vision of beauty. Business rivals who pretended her body was a weakness, not a strength. But Antony's words, they weren't just a defense. They were a declaration. That night, when he arrived at her apartment, she opened the door and, without a word, wrapped her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "For what?" he asked, his hands sliding protectively around her. "For standing by me. For not hiding me." He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. "Christy, listen to me. I'll never hide you. You're not just part of my life. You are my life. Let them talk. Let them laugh. None of it matters. You're mine, and I'm proud of it." Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back, smiling through the storm in her heart. For so long she had longed for someone who loved her, not the empire, not the money, not the image, but her. And now finally she had it. Yet with love came fear. Christy knew she couldn't hide forever. Antony deserved the truth, that the woman he loved wasn't just Christy Williams, the quiet, kind-hearted woman he met at a wedding reception, but Christy Williams, billionaire CEO of Williams Innovations, the empire that had secretly funded his dream. The secret grew heavier with each passing day. She wanted to tell him, but the thought of losing him terrified her. What if the revelation made him feel betrayed? What if he thought she had manipulated him? The moment came on a quiet evening. They were at his apartment, sharing takeout from a Chinese restaurant, laughter filling the space as they argued over who got the last dumpling. Antony was telling her about his latest breakthrough on the prototype, how the investors were excited, how he felt like his life was finally coming together. His joy was contagious, his gratitude endless. And then Christy couldn't hold it anymore. "Antony," she said softly, her voice cutting through his laughter. He looked at her, concerned. "What is it?" Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her chopsticks. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." His brows furrowed. "Christy, you're scaring me. What is it?" She drew a deep breath. "That contact I gave you at the wedding. It wasn't random. They work for my company." "Your company?" He tilted his head. "You mean you own a business?" Her lips pressed together. "Not just a business, Antony. I'm the CEO of Williams Innovations." For a long, suffocating moment, silence filled the room. Antony stared at her, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "Wait, you're saying you're the Williams Innovations?" The company that he stopped, his mind reeling. "Christy, that's impossible. Why didn't you tell me?" She swallowed hard, her heart pounding. "Because I wanted you to see me, not the money, not the empire, just me. For once in my life, I wanted someone to love Christy, not the billionaire on magazine covers." He sat back, running a hand through his hair. His world felt like it had tilted. The woman he loved, the woman who had walked into his life like a miracle, wasn't just extraordinary. She was one of the most powerful figures in the industry he had clawed his way back into. And yet, as the shock settled, Antony felt something else, admiration. He looked at her, at the vulnerability in her eyes, at the fear hidden behind her strength, and he realized she had trusted him with the one truth she had guarded from the world. Slowly he reached across the table and took her trembling hands in his. "Christy," he said quietly, "I don't care if you're a billionaire or a barista. I don't care if you own a company or live paycheck to paycheck. I love you. You, the woman who laughed with me over dumplings, who defended me when I was at my lowest, who gave me hope when I had none. That's who I fell in love with." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time she didn't hide them. "Do you mean that?" she whispered. "With everything in me," he replied. She threw her arms around him, clinging to him as if letting go would mean losing. The one thing she had searched for all her life. And in that moment, Christy Williams, the billionaire who had conquered boardrooms and competitors, was simply a woman in love, vulnerable and free. Their joy, however, was soon tested again. A week later, an invitation arrived at Antony's office. It was from Derek and Julia. They were hosting an exclusive party in Los Angeles, filled with industry giants and social elites. The note was written with polished politeness, but Antony knew better. He saw the trap hidden beneath the velvet words. "They want to humiliate us," he said bitterly, tossing the invitation aside. "They'll gather their friends, their investors, and use us as entertainment." "Then don't go," Christy said gently. "I won't," Antony replied. "I've got nothing to prove to them anymore. Let them have their party." But Christy's eyes narrowed, a spark of fire igniting within her. "No, we'll go." Antony blinked. "What?" "We'll go," she repeated, her voice fierce. "They think they can mock us, make a spectacle out of us. But they've underestimated me. They've underestimated us." Antony hesitated. "Christy, I don't want you to walk into their games. You don't need to prove anything to them." She placed a hand on his chest, her gaze steady. "I'm not proving anything to them, Antony. I'm proving it to us, to show them that the love they mocked is stronger than any insult, stronger than any betrayal." For the first time in years, Antony felt a surge of anticipation, not for revenge, but for justice. "All right," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "If we're going to this party, we're not going quietly." Christy's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Oh, we won't, trust me." And with that, their decision was sealed. The battlefield would no longer be a wedding reception. This time it would be the glittering sands of Los Angeles. And when they arrived, it wouldn't be as the humiliated and the betrayed, but as the king and queen they truly were. The night air along the Los Angeles coastline hummed with anticipation. Derek and Julia's beachside party had been the talk of the city for weeks. Invitations had been sent to the elite, actors, entrepreneurs, tech moguls, influencers, all eager to mingle on the private sands under the glow of lanterns and fireworks. It was supposed to be their night, Derek and Julia's grand display of wealth and status. They had planned it with surgical precision, every detail meant to dazzle their guests and remind Antony Pierce just how far below them he truly was. But Derek and Julia had made one fatal mistake. They didn't know who Christy Williams really was. Guests sipped champagne as luxury. Cars lined the coastal driveway leading down to the beach. The party glittered with designer gowns, silk suits, and the arrogance of people who believed themselves untouchable. Conversations buzzed about Derek's rising company and Julia's latest social media feature. Somewhere in the crowd, someone muttered about Antony's RSVP, how ridiculous it was that he would even think to show his face. Then the sound came, a thunderous chopping in the sky. Heads turned upward as the rhythmic beat of helicopter blades cut through the music, scattering napkins and rattling glasses. Dresses whipped in the wind. Champagne sloshed from crystal flutes. Guests raised their hands to shield their eyes as the helicopter descended, the sand swirling into a storm around them. When the doors opened, silence swallowed the crowd. Christy Williams stepped out first. She moved like royalty, her gown a river of gold silk that shimmered beneath the lantern light. Her hair swept up into a crown that revealed every proud curve of her face. Diamonds caught the glow of fire pits, but her most dazzling accessory was her presence, an aura that silenced laughter, straightened spines, and commanded the very air around her. And then came Antony, in a tailored black suit. His eyes locked on hers, as if she was the only person in the world. He took her hand, kissed it softly, then clasped it firmly as they walked down onto the sand together. Every whisper died. Every mocking smirk froze. It was the kind of entrance people would talk about for years. Julia hurried forward, her red dress clinging uncomfortably in the wind. Her forced smile stretched too thin. Christy's lips curved, calm and unbothered. Julia, she let her name linger in the air like an afterthought. "Thank you for hosting us on my beach." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Julia blinked. "Your beach?" Christy's gaze swept across the glowing shoreline, the expensive lanterns, the rows of plush seating. Derek and Julia had rented at ridiculous cost. "Yes, I bought this property 5 years ago." "Didn't anyone tell you?" The silence was deafening. Julia's smile cracked, her knuckles whitening around her champagne glass. Derek, red-faced, stepped forward. "Williams Innovations," he muttered, suddenly recognizing the name that had loomed over his own failing company like a shadow. Christy met his eyes with quiet fire. "Williams Innovations," she confirmed, "and every subsidiary you've been trying to compete with for years. Consider tonight a friendly reminder of where the lines are drawn." The whispers rose again, but this time in awe, not mockery. Phones came out, discreet photos snapped, and Antony's heart swelled as he watched the woman beside him hold the room. No, the world in the palm of her hand. Derek attempted a weak laugh. "Well, I suppose even billionaires can have interesting taste in men." His eyes flicked to Antony with thinly veiled contempt. Antony felt anger rise, but Christy's hand on his arm steadied him. She didn't flinch. She didn't need to. Her silence alone made Derek shrink. Instead, Antony took a step forward. "Funny," he said clearly, his voice carrying across the sand, "because while you were busy stealing my prototype and my fiancée, I found someone worth far more than anything you'll ever have. A woman who chose me, not for money, not for status, but because she saw me when no one else did." Christy's eyes softened, pride radiating in her smile. The crowd erupted in murmurs again, some gasping at Antony's boldness, others nodding in approval. For the first time in years, he felt free, not broken, not lesser, but equal, standing tall beside the woman who had restored him. The music shifted as the string lights above swayed in the coastal breeze. Fireworks flared in the distance, painting the sky with crimson and gold. Christy turned to Antony, her hand still in his. And then Antony dropped to one knee. The world stopped. The waves hushed against the shore. The fire pits crackled faintly. The crowd collectively held its breath. Christy gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and tears. "Christy Williams," Antony said, his voice strong but thick with emotion, "you are the most powerful woman I have ever known. But more than that, you are the kindest, the fiercest, the most extraordinary soul I've ever met. You gave me back my life, my dream, and my heart. I don't care about your empire. I don't care about the billions. I care about you, only you. Will you marry me?" A hush fell across the beach, broken only by the waves, and Christy's trembling laughter through her tears. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, firmer, with joy that rang out over the sand. "Yes." The crowd erupted, cheers, claps, even shouts of approval. Strangers toasted their glasses, phones flashed, and Julia's face turned pale as ash. Derek stood motionless, his empire already collapsing in the shadow of what stood before him. Antony rose, pulling Christy into his arms, kissing her deeply under the lights, fireworks bursting above them, as though the sky itself celebrated their union. In the months that followed, Antony and Christy worked side by side to rebuild his old prototype, not as the fragile dream Derek had stolen, but as a new, sophisticated innovation that shook the tech world. Together, Williams Innovations launched it to global acclaim, and within a year Derek's company had collapsed, its name reduced to a forgotten footnote. Antony didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His victory was not in another man's downfall, but in the woman at his side. Their wedding was held in San Francisco, overlooking the bay where it all began. Christy walked down the aisle in a gown that shimmered like liquid starlight, her curves embraced by fabric spun with love, not judgment. Antony waited at the altar, his eyes never leaving hers, his smile steady, unwavering, the smile of a man who had finally found home. They exchanged vows beneath an arch of roses, every word spoken with a conviction that left not a single dry eye in the crowd. When Antony kissed his bride, the city's bells rang in celebration, and Christy, for the first time in her life, felt richer than ever before. Not because of the empire she commanded, but because of the man who had given her his heart without condition. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were infinite, the queen and her king. And so Antony and Christy's story comes to a close, not with fairy tales or fleeting moments, but with a love that is real, powerful and everlasting. From heartbreak and betrayal to triumph and true connection, they proved that love isn't about wealth, status, or appearances. It's about loyalty, courage, and seeing someone for who they truly are. Christy, the fierce billionaire with a heart of gold, and Antony, the man who never stopped believing in love, found in each other the kind of happiness most people only dream of. Their journey reminds us all that true love is worth waiting for, worth fighting for, and worth celebrating every single day. Thank you for joining them on this unforgettable journey. May your hearts be inspired, your spirits lifted, and may you always believe in the magic of love. Vintage Mike Tales,